Good morning and welcome to the Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfick Farzan. Now, before we head into the details of developing news in Sri Lanka, just a reminder that on the 21st of September is Sri Lanka's presidential election, and around 17 million Sri Lankans will be exercising their franchise to elect the new president of Sri Lanka. Now, one of the major concerns surrounding this year's presidential election is the security of presidential candidates. Now, the Minister of Public Security has confirmed that the security of presidential candidates is being thoroughly ensured. Now, the ministry is actively seeking continuous intelligence reports on potential threats to the presidential candidates contesting the upcoming presidential election. Now, according to the ministry, security measures will be based on these intelligence reports. Now, detailed security assessments will be conducted a few days before any public rally involving a presidential candidate, and at the same time another security assessment will take place several hours before the respective presidential candidate visits the location of the public rally. Now, according to the Ministry of Public Security, under this special security program, all necessary precautions are being taken to safeguard the presidential election candidates. Now, despite these assurances, yesterday, Lanka, a representative for SLPP's presidential candidate Namal Rajapaksa, who visited the Election Commission, later on told reporters that they had been informed of potential threats being made against presidential candidate Namal Rajapaksa and his father, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, also the leader of the SLPP. Now, at the same time, the Election Commission has summoned the district returning officers involved in the election process for a very urgent meeting today. Now, the meeting is scheduled for 9:30 a.m. and will include the presence of Deputy Assistant Commissioners and Deputy Commissioners as well. Now, Election Commission Chairman RML Ratnayaka said that the primary agenda of this meeting is to discuss the framework and other activities related to the September 21st presidential election. Now, while presidential candidates are on a campaign trail seeking to muster support for their candidacy to run for the highest office in the country, there is an increasing rise or an increase in the number of complaints being received with regard to the violation of election laws. Now, election monitoring organizations have raised concerns about the rising misuse of government property connected with the presidential election. Now, Manjula Gajanayaka is the Executive Director of the Institute of Democratic Reforms and Electoral Studies. Now, he highlighted that activities such as entertaining voters are intensifying despite notification being made by the authorities to seize such flouting of election laws. Now, in a related development, PAFREL, another election monitoring organization, has also noted that they have received an increased number of complaints over the violation of election laws. Now, according to its executive director Rohana Hettiarachchi, a total of 1,066 violations have been recorded, with 515 cases confirmed. Now, at the same time, Sri Lankan presidential candidates on full swing with regard to the presidential election, trying to gather as enough support to get the voters to go and vote for them to secure the highest office in the country. Now, one candidate is sitting President Ranil Wickremesinghe, who is contesting as an independent this time around. Now, at a Ranil Puluang or Ranil Can rally in Ruanvalla, President Ranil Wickremesinghe delivered a scathing critique of his political opponents Sajith Premadasa and Anura Kumara Dissanayake for their recent political ambitions. Now, Wickremesinghe has accused them of abandoning the people during the country's economic collapse and questioned their credibility. Now, he said when the people of this country were without food, medicine, fuel and gas, he took on the responsibility of addressing these needs. He said no one else stepped up and that Sajith and Anura ran away. Now, he emphasized that under his leadership, the country now has essential supplies and the children are receiving proper education. Now, he also expressed disbelief at the sudden promises made by his opponents, highlighting their absence during the crisis. He went on to note that during the crisis, he called on both Sajith Premadasa and Anura Kumara Dissanayake to join with him in the government and solve the crisis in the country. He sought their support, and he said that despite these requests, both of them turned down the request to extend support and even join the government. Then he also questioned, during that time, the only demand by them was for elections, and they went on strike. Ranil Wickremesinghe also questioned, while the people are suffering without any food, are they supposed to eat the ballot paper when there are such demands for elections being made during a time of crisis? Now, Ranil Wickremesinghe also underscored his efforts in securing international support and relief. He said that he spoke to the International Monetary Fund and world leaders and got some sort of relief for the people of Sri Lanka. Now, another presidential candidate is Anura Kumara Dissanayake. Now, he is representing the National People's Power. Now, in recent weeks, both Anura Kumara Dissanayake and Ranil Wickremesinghe have been exchanging blows on the political stage. Now, it was yesterday that Ranil Wickremesinghe called out Anura Kumara Dissanayake to respond to his question with regard to the NPP's economic policy. Now, at the same time, Anura Kumara Dissanayake also challenged Ranil Wickremesinghe for an open debate, saying that instead of making scattered statements on the political stage, let's meet and debate and ask questions from each other. Now, Anura Kumara Dissanayake at a campaign rally last evening urged the nation outdated mode of politics and embrace a new direction. Now, he criticized the current political landscape and his opponents, Ranil Wickremesinghe and Sajith Premadasa, for their lack of substantial political content. Now, Anura Kumara Dissanayake at this political rally went on to note, on the political stage, both his opponents, Ranil Wickremesinghe and Sajith Premadasa, are running out of content to make political statements and also to make criticism against the NPP camp. Now, he accused Wickremesinghe of attempting to mislead the public by by portraying a false friendship between Dissanayake and Wickremesinghe. He said that Ranil Wickremesinghe is trying to portray to the nation that Anura Kumara Dissanayake is his friend. However, Dissanayake said that he is not Wickremesinghe's friend. He attributed this to a one-sided love story, noting that during his school times that there were incidents where one person was in love, but the other person who he was loving was not even aware of such a feeling. Now, Dissanayake suggested that Wickremesinghe's claims of friendship were a strategic move to mitigate the anticipated victory of the National People's Power. Now, at the same time, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, the leader of the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, is also running for president. Now, he has announced a comprehensive and strategic plan to eradicate poverty from Sri Lanka. Now, this plan involves providing 20,000 rupees per month to selected poor families for a period of 24 months. Now, speaking at a public rally, he outlined his vision for a self-sufficient society. He said that most of the poor people, or all of them, do not wish to be dependent on relief or handouts forever. He said that these people want to rise up on their own feet and also contribute to society. And thus, Sajith Premadasa said that his program for 24 months to award 20,000 rupees per month is aimed at eradicating poverty, so that these poor families will be able to use that money for consumption, savings, investments and other uses. Now, he also said that this program aims to provide a substantial path out of poverty for these poor people, fostering economic independence as well. Now, while all these statements are being made on the political platform, another important statement was made last afternoon at a press conference. Now, this statement comes from Mujibur Rahman, who was in Parliament, then stepped down and then also again came back into Parliament. Now, Mujibur Rahman has said that there are reports indicating that approximately 80 MPs and ministers are now preparing to leave the country after the presidential election. Now, he said that initially these members were on Ranil Wickremesinghe's side, and noting that those people are no longer with him. Mujibur Rahman, representing the Samagi Jana Balawegaya, explained that many of those individuals have already secured visas to leave the country following the presidential election. Now, this revelation comes at a critical time as Sri Lanka approaches significant political changes with the upcoming presidential election. Now, what's going to happen to schools during this presidential election? Now, everyone is aware that most of the schools in the country are polling centers and also counting centers. So what's going to happen? Now, the Minister of Education has announced that all schools in the island will be closed on the 20th of September, one day ahead of the presidential election. Now, according to the ministry, schools will resume for normal operations on the 23rd. Now, in preparation for the presidential election, schools designated as polling centers will have to be handed over to the local Grama Niladhari officer in the evening on the 19th next week. Now, additionally, schools operating as counting centers will only be closed during that specified period. Now, speaking of elections, across the world, this year is an election year. In most countries, elections have already taken place. In some countries, elections are going on, and some countries, elections are in the coming weeks or in the coming months. Now, yesterday, the 57th session of the United Nations Human Rights Council opened in Geneva. Now, in one of the statements made by Volker Turk, the High Commissioner for the Office of Human Rights in the UN, mentioned about elections. Now, he was not specifying countries in his statement, but he was speaking on a more global perspective with regard to elections. Now, he called on voters worldwide to prioritize human rights issues as they participate in elections in their respective countries. Now, with several elections already held and more scheduled for this year, Volker Turk, the High Commissioner, has emphasized the importance of considering fundamental human rights when choosing political platforms and candidates.
With some elections already having taken place and others still to come this year, urge all voters to keep in mind the issues that matter most to them, be it at home, education for their children, their health or job, justice, their family and loved ones, the environment, to be free from violence, tackling corruption, being heard. These are all human rights issues. I urge voters to ask themselves which of the political platforms or candidates will work for the human rights of everyone, which will promote equality of opportunity and strive to foster economies that offer decent work for decent pay. Which of the political parties have human rights and solidarity as part of their vision, rather than undermining them? And I urge all voters to be vigilant. Be wary of the shrill voices, the strongman types that throw glitter in our eyes, offering illusory solutions that deny reality. Know that when one group is singled out as a scapegoat for society's ills, one day your own might be next.
Well, that's a wrap of this morning's edition of the Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfick Farzan. But stay with Newsfirst. Follow us on our social media handles on X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube and TikTok, and also visit our award-winning website www.newsfirst.lk for all these stories and more in detail. Until I meet you again tomorrow morning, stay safe.